Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into a term you hear everywhere.
Customer-centricity.
Exactly. But what's really behind it, we've been looking at a PDF focused specifically on creating a customer-centric organization.
Yeah, really interesting source.
Our mission then is to unpack what it means, why it's apparently so valuable, and look at practical ways to actually do it using the insights from this material.
Sounds good.
You always hear those quotes, right? Like Jeff Bezos saying, focus obsessively on the customer.
Mm-hmm.
But what does obsessively even look like day to day for a whole company? How do you translate that?
That's exactly what this source tries to tackle. It frames customer centricity first off as a mindset, not just a department.
A mindset.
Yeah, it's about putting customer experiences right at the core of your whole strategy.
So it's sort of flipping the viewpoint.
Exactly. Viewing the entire company, all your decisions through the customer's eyes, not just your own internal org chart.
So it's definitely more than just like having a good call center.
Oh, way more. The source is really clear. It's about prioritizing understanding customer needs, not just pushing out the products you've already built.
Right. Needs first, product second.
Sort of. The idea is that truly satisfied customers, they become loyal. They even advocate for you. And that's what leads to sustainable growth.
Makes sense.
And the source breaks this down into like three main parts. First, real customer focus, meaning decisions are based on those customer needs.
Okay.
Second, thinking about the holistic experience, the whole journey, start to finish, not just bits and pieces.
The entire interaction.
And third, building an ongoing relationship, moving beyond just one transaction.
Right. Making it last. Okay. So philosophy aside, let's talk value. Does the source actually show this makes a difference, financially?
It absolutely does. And the source brings data to the table here. It says pretty plainly that customer-centric companies significantly outperform others.
Significantly? Like how much?
Well, the stats highlighted are pretty stark. It mentions 63% higher profits.
63.
Yeah, and it clarifies that customer-focused companies are specifically 60% more profitable than companies that aren't focused that way.
Wait, 60% more profitable? That's huge.
It really is. It makes it less of a nice idea and more of a strategic must-have.
Changes the whole calculation. What else?
It doesn't stop there. The source also cites 81% improved loyalty.
81%. So they come back more often?
Significantly more likely to do repeat business, yes. And then there's retention. 89% better customer retention rates.
Wow. So higher profits, more repeat business, and they stick around longer.
That's the trifecta the source points to.
And this isn't just for big corporations selling widgets, is it? The source said something about nonprofits, public sector.
That's the key point in the material, yeah. The principles hold true. Whether it's a buyer, a citizen, a patient, putting their needs first builds that loyalty and makes the whole system work better.
Okay, so the why is clear. Big benefits. How does a company actually do this? How do they implement the mindset? The source mentioned strategic choices.
Right. The material contrasts this with just, reacting to endless feature requests.
Which feels like chaos sometimes.
Exactly. By really getting the customer's underlying needs, the organization can make smarter choices about where to focus, aligning efforts with real opportunities.
So it's a deeper internal shift.
Absolutely. It requires a genuine empathetic view. The source talks about seeing challenges from the customer's perspective, not just your own.
Empathy drives it.
That's the engine, yeah. It leads to products that offer immediate value and build those lasting connections.
Okay. Does the source give steps? Like how to start?
It does lay out 4 key steps, which is helpful. First, identify needs. Dig deep for the real problems.
They're just symptoms.
Right. Second, adopt their perspective. Really try to see it through their eyes.
Put yourself in their shoes.
Third, develop solutions. Address immediate and long-term needs. And fourth, build relationships. Think beyond the transaction.
Identify, adopt, develop, gold.
Great.
But you need to know who the customer is first, right? Source gets specific here.
Very specific. It makes a crucial distinction between internal and external customers.
Internal. Like colleagues.
Pretty much. People inside your organization who use systems or services built by other teams inside the same organization. They support the internal workings.
Yeah.
The source gives a good example. A bank's underwriting manager using a credit scoring tool built by the bank's own IT team. The manager is IT's internal customer.
Got it. They use internal tools to do their job, and external customers are the ones we usually think of.
Exactly. Outside the company, buying or using your main products, B2B, B2C, B2P, you name it.
Like the person applying for the loan using the bank's app.
Precisely. That's the example used. The source even shows diagrams from a banking cloud example, illustrating how internal systems, like loan origination, connect to external channels, like the mobile app, serving both types of customers.
Looking at that banking example, it gets complicated fast. The source talks about a chain of customer relationships.
Yeah, that's a really important concept, especially for bigger companies. Value often isn't just a direct line. It flows through dependencies, like a chain.
So one team's output is another team's input.
Exactly. And the source points out that a product manager or a team might be a provider to the next link in the chain,
Their customer.
while also being a customer of the team before them in the chain.
Okay, that makes sense.
The source's detailed banking chain example really clarifies this. You have cloud infrastructure providing services to internal platform teams.
Okay, step one.
Then the platform teams use that cloud stuff to build, say, the core banking platform.
Serving maybe an e-banking team.
Right. The e-bank platform uses core banking to create digital services, and then the mobile banking app team builds on that to deliver the final app to the external customer.
So it's nested. Each team focuses on their immediate customer in that sequence.
Perfectly put. Each one consumes or enhances value before passing it on. Understanding your spot in that chain is key.
And that ties into another idea from the source, right? Whole product thinking.
Yes, exactly. Which is about seeing your product as more than just its features.
More holistic.
Much more. The source pushes this idea of considering the entire customer journey. Discovery, purchase, use, support, everything.
A whole life cycle.
Right. It forces you to think beyond just the core function. The material uses the whole product model for this.
The model. Okay, what are the levels?
It starts with the MVP, minimum viable product. Just enough to test a core idea.
Validate the hypothesis.
Then the core product, the basic solution. Then the expected product core, plus what people reasonably anticipate.
Table stakes?
Kind of.
Sort of.
Then the augmented product. This is where you add differentiators. And finally, the potential product future stuff to keep them engaged.
And satisfaction happens when the actual value meets or beats the perceived value at each level.
That's the idea presented, which leads directly into understanding how customers perceive value.
Which isn't always straightforward.
Definitely not. The source talks about the value versus cost relationship. If perceived value is less than cost, you've got a problem. But if perceived value is higher than cost, you might have room for premium pricing, assuming your margins work out.
But value isn't just price and features, is it? The source mentioned other dimensions.
Correct. It highlights brand value, things like trust, reliability, prestige, and also values alignment. Does the company's mission or ethics resonate with the customer?
That feels increasingly important.
It really does. The source also breaks down how products deliver value into two main camps. Cost reduction for the customer.
Making things cheaper or more efficient for them.
Exactly. Streamlining workflows, lower operational costs, less waste, things like that. Or revenue enhancement for the customer.
Helping them make more money.
Right. Faster time to market for their products, access to new markets, enabling new services they can offer.
Okay, so understanding all these facets of value requires really knowing your customer. Which brings us back to research. The source splits research into two types.
It does. A clear distinction between market research and user research. Market research, according to the source, is about the who and what. Bigger samples looking at concepts, opinions, what the market will buy. It mainly drives product strategy.
The big picture.
Right, whereas user research is about the how and why. Smaller samples usually, observing what people do, how they will use the product. This drives product design.
Strategy versus design. Got it.
And the source really pushes empathic approaches here, trying to get past assumptions.
Like Gemba walks.
Exactly. Going to the customer's actual environment, observing them work or use things, that context is gold for uncovering needs they might not even articulate.
Seeing it firsthand. So research feeds strategy, which then informs design, which is also fed by research.
It's a continuous loop, ideally.
Now, you mentioned different relationships earlier. Internal, external, the chain. The source says you need to tailor solutions based on these relationships.
Yeah, you can't use a one-size-fits-all approach. Market research helps figure out where your customer relationship falls on a spectrum of engagement.
A spectrum.
Well, you might have general solutions for broad audiences where engagement is pretty indirect. Think mass market software.
Yep.
Or multi-segment solutions tweaked for different market groups. Then you get into deep and narrow solutions, highly specialized premium stuff for niche markets.
The higher touch, probably.
Often, yes. And at the far end, customer-built solutions. intense collaboration, maybe one-on-one, to build something totally custom. The source uses a government defense contract as an example.
Right, for civic needs.
And the source has this diagram showing how things change across that spectrum, how you define requirements, how often you validate, how you manage scope, funding, even accounting. The relationship really dictates the process.
The intimacy level changes everything. Okay, one last major point from the source. Market rhythms and events. This sounds like timing.
It's all about timing. Lean-Agile thinking, the source says, means understanding that a product's value isn't fixed. When you release, it matters hugely.
How so?
Well, you need to align with predictable cycles. Think holidays, tax seasons, annual planning for businesses.
Right, things you know are coming.
And also be ready for unpredictable stuff. New regulations, a competitor's move, a tech shift. These patterns should drive your release schedule and what features you prioritize for when.
The source had examples, right?
Yeah.
The retail software.
Yeah, B2B retail software. Its value plummets right before the holidays because nobody wants to change systems then. You have to release earlier.
Makes sense. Or the toy maker.
Value obviously peaks massively during the holiday shopping season. Release timing is everything there.
And there was another diagram about external events.
Right, showing things like how much prep time a customer needs for a new feature, or when a competitor might release something, or a known regulatory deadline. It all feeds into when you should launch, timing as strategy.
Wow, okay. That was a lot to unpack from this source.
Mhm.
We went from defining customer centricity as this core mindset,
And seeing the really compelling business value, those profit and loyalty numbers.
right? Then looking at how to implement it, identifying needs, empathy, the 4 steps.
Figuring out who your customers actually are, internal and external, and those complex relationship chains.
Yeah, and embracing that whole product view, thinking beyond just features,
Understanding how value is perceived, not just cost, but brand and values too.
and how research informs both the big strategy and the detailed design.
Tailoring solutions based on how close you are to the customer.
And finally, using those market rhythms and events to time things strategically.
Yeah, the thread through it all from the source seems to be, this isn't just a nice to have. Putting the customer truly at the center is framed as fundamental to success, profit, loyalty, even how well the teams inside work together.
So, thinking about all this, how does this view from the source maybe change how you, listening, look at the products you use, or maybe the work you do? Are you serving internal partners or external customers?
And here's a final thought to chew on. Given how complex organizations are with all those internal, external customer links we talked about, how hard and maybe how vital is it really to keep that empathy, that customer-centric view truly alive at every single point in that chain? Something to think about.